You are basically doing the school run for free.
And what about hydrogen? Where do you see hydrogen fitting into the picture?
My social media feeds are full of EV adoption and EV frustration. So internal combustion engines vehicles parked in EV spaces. There's a bit of cable theft going on as well, so the chargers are being almost like attacked.
It cost me 80 quid to fill my car up with petrol for 550 odd miles of range.
Where it normally was kind of 50-60 pence has gone up to £1 a kilowatt. Yeah.
Wow. There was a gap somewhere in the market. What was it that you spotted that you thought, right, we need to get this sorted out? Welcome to the Business Sense podcast. I'm Garry Crosby. This is the podcast where we make sense of the business journey by talking to owners about what they've learnt along the way. Let's jump into today's episode. Trev, thanks for coming in for the Business Sense podcast. Lots of things going through my mind about electric vehicles and stuff, and we'll talk about EV blocks and where you're going with that. But I wanted to ask you a question at the beginning about electric cars. Why would anybody want to buy an electric car?
Why not? Or why wouldn't you?
Well, they're expensive.
Yeah.
People might have range anxiety. The charging infrastructure isn't very good. You know, what's going to promote people to buy an electric car?
So, yeah, capital outlay is high, if you like. Running costs pretty low. So there's a lot less moving parts on an electric vehicle for a start.
Yeah.
You're not taking it for an oil change every, 5,000-10,000 miles or whatever it is now. And with solar power, it's almost like beyond proof of concept now. We're seeing a huge demand for solar installers to install solar panels on people's houses,
Right.
backed up by battery storage. So you've harvested the sun off your roof and your home. You then put it into battery storage in the garage or on the side of the wall on the outside of the house somewhere. You come home, park your car on the drive, and then start using that energy to charge your car up. You're basically doing the school run for free and doing lots of other small shopping trips and your smaller journeys where the average journey is like 35 miles a day, or the stats are around that sort of number. Do you really need a big petrol car to do that? And would you rather run it for, once you've bought it, or even leased your electric vehicle if you want to have the latest and greatest, and you're running it for free, effectively?
You're running it for free, but you've got like 20 grand's worth of outlay to put the solar panels up and all that sort of stuff. And then you begin to compare that outlay with petrol vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I agree with you that in 10 years' time, with all that infrastructure in place, it might be easy. But right now, it's expensive. And surely with the electricity charges the way they are now, people are paying a lot more to run their electric cars.
Hence the huge spike in demand for batteries, like home battery storage and larger solar arrays, micro generation on people's houses.
Yeah.
So instead of just doing what was kind of enough solar panels to hit the feed-in tariff originally, a lot of people are just going, well, I want to maximise all of my roof space and fit as many batteries as I can afford to pay for in the garage.
Yeah.
So that I can run my house for free, run the car, and make the most of your natural resources, if you like.
And what about the batteries? I don't know what the second-hand market's like for electric cars now, but I imagine that we still don't really know what state these batteries are in after 100,000, 200,000 miles.
So they're starting to be reused in like second and third generation applications. So where you've got static battery storage, they will be tested and then repurposed into different items that are probably less demanding on the battery as opposed to an electric vehicle that's accelerating and decelerating all the time.
Oh, so actually there's a power demand on the battery that if you use it for something else that doesn't have that power demand, it can extend its life.
Yeah. So we're seeing that come through to, like say, second and third generation purposes being repurposed.
And what about hydrogen? Where do you see hydrogen fitting into the picture?
I definitely see it fitting in somewhere. The problem is, like, you need huge storage for it. It's not like very dense in terms of energy output for its density. So I think what we'll see is a hydrogen static generator with electric car charging points in front of it. So you'll come in, charge your car off the electric car chargers from battery storage, or maybe from the grid, a little bit of both. Right. And if there's not enough there, then there'll be a hydrogen generator set to keep up with demand. It's instantaneous, fire it up. You can then have all those chargers running flat out where the grid can't keep up, or there's not, there's huge demands at the moment on the DNOs, which is the district network operators, for new connection points across the UK off the national grid. So you could then run these as islands. So you could have a static generator set run by hydrogen, backed up by battery storage. And then there's no need for a DNO application.
So I was thinking of hydrogen fuel cells in cars, and the idea that, electric cars are just a bit of a fad, right? So we've got fossil fuels, we've got hydrogen to come, cars running on the most abundant substance in the universe, and right now we're just playing with electric cars because we haven't got hydrogen ready yet.
Yeah, so I think hydrogen may come in the larger vehicles. So like semi-trucks and Arctic lorries,
trains and boats, and
that kind of thing. Yeah, small cars. I don't know whether we're even going to get the range out of hydrogen. Unless you're pressurising that tank massively, and then do you want a highly explosive in the back of the car? On the school run, that could introduce its own problems.
Yeah, so a different type of problem in a way.
Yeah.
The creation of the hydrogen in the first place and then the storage of it.
Yeah.
So your area of expertise, I know, is the EV charging infrastructure, and that's what EV Blocks is all about. What's happening in the charging infrastructure world in the UK at the minute?
Well, like I said, we've seen a lot of applications for new connections, a lot of DC charging, level 3 charging going in.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean for the motorist?
So you've got two different types of charge. You've got AC, which is generally from 3 kilowatts all the way up to 22 kilowatts. And if it's coming into the car as AC energy, then the car has to then convert that to DC to charge the batteries.
Got it. Right.
So then you go to a DC charger, you are plugging in straight DC to DC on the car.
Right.
You can get a faster kind of current draw over that and a shorter duration of charge time. And you're not having to run your inverter in the car, so you're not producing excessive heat. And the charger's doing the heat part as opposed to your car. And then you can go up to sort of like 300 kilowatts, which is a big power. I mean, you're seeing a lot of the common DC charge on the motorway, like 100, 150 kilowatts, pretty good. It's a quick charge, you can nip in, have a comfort break, pick up a drink or a coffee, and then be almost ready to get on again, 70, 80% ready for your next leg of your journey. And then there's also talk around higher voltages being deployed for DC cars, so 800 volts infrastructure, meaning that you'll be able to charge even faster again.
Right. And I think we gathered some stats, didn't we, when we were talking about it before? 37,000 charging devices in the UK, 735,000 EV cars on the road. So the people are always, at the moment, going to be hunting for chargers, right?
Yeah. So my social media feeds are full of EV adoption and EV frustration. So internal combustion engines, vehicles parked in EV spaces, or parked where there's EV charging that could be taking place.
Yeah.
Or even probably worse is an EV vehicle parked in an EV spot but not charging.
Right.
So they've taken that premium parking spot at Waitrose or wherever,
Yeah.
but are not utilising it. And you think, well, that's not really on, guys. If you're going to park there, you should really be charging.
So we've got some bad behaviours.
Yeah.
We've got some challenges with the charger network as well. We were talking about that, weren't we? So location, we've kind of mentioned there. Cost is the thing as well. If people don't pay the same at a charging location as they do if they were plugging in at home.
Yeah, so it is vastly reduced if you're charging at home.
Yeah.
And when you're charging out on the road, it depends what network you choose to charge on, how reliable their equipment is. When you arrive, are you going to be kind of disappointed?
Yeah.
There's a bit of cable theft going on as well, so the chargers are being almost like attacked, with the cables cut.
Astonishing.
So, and there's things like ZapMap, which are fantastic resources for planning your journey, and finding up to date information about that charger. Like last night, someone's gone to charge first thing in the morning, but it's been damaged.
Yeah,
it's quite quick to communicate that information back. It's almost like a driver community on that app.
And thinking about the cost, I mean, do you have any idea about the difference? It cost me 80 quid to fill my car up with petrol for 550 odd miles of range. How would that compare to an electric car?
So it's up around the £1 per kilowatt mark at the moment.
Right.
So that has increased quite a lot with this kind of energy crisis, cost of living crisis, where it normally was kind of 50, 60 pence has gone up to £1 a kilowatt. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But you are getting that convenience of you're in and you're out pretty quick.
For petrol. Yeah.
And for electric, there's not much longer duration there.
And thinking about, so obviously you founded EV Blocks a couple of years ago. There was a gap somewhere in the market. What was it that you spotted that you thought, right, we need to get this sorted out?
So I had a contracting business installing EV chargers for some of the biggest brands on the planet in terms of car industry and automakers. And we were installing EV chargers on their showroom forecourts, doing everything the traditional way. So building up pieces of shuttering with wood that then becomes a byproduct and waste, using standard cement, bringing a duct in through and casting a base. All that takes quite a lot of time to set up, pour, and then you've got to wait for it to dry. Yeah. And we were under a lot of pressure to deliver a lot of car showrooms in a short period of time. Yeah. So it was, how can we standardise every installation? So then we got to a process where we were fitting, a new submain, new distribution board that would be laid out like this. Here's the protective devices that would be laid out like that. Yeah. Then all the cabling out to the field, i.e. the forecourt, and then a precast concrete base for the electric car charging pedestals to be mounted onto. Right. So we started off, we made a concrete base specifically for the pedestal that we were installing. Yeah. Oh, this is fantastic. We're flying along. Brilliant. Then, with no notice at all, the company we were working for changed the pedestal fixing arrangement. So we had all these bases in the ground, and we're like, nothing fits. How are we going to get around this? And also one of the disadvantages with that was we were having to fit a separate earth pit as well. So you'd have a stake in the ground for local earthing for that charger. So you've got another piece of ducting out to an earth pit and then come back to our precast block and bring all the cables in. So, right, we need something that's A, universal, and B, we want to be able to put an earth rod, a ground rod into the ground. So then we came up with EV Blocks.
With this.
And it's evolved since, so we now moved to a composite adapt plate on the top. And inside the centre is hollow, so that you can put your earth stake in there, you can coil up cable over and leave it overnight underneath the adapter plate if you need to.
Yeah.
If you don't get finished that day. And it can be put in for future-proof as well. So we wanted something that could be forever, not just for today's installation, because the technology's changed so much. We must be on sort of generation 5, if you like, of EV chargers when you look across the different EV manufacturers who make these charging devices. So something uniform, precast, because it's fast. And we're finding a lot of our customers, installers, they're able to complete their installations in a day. So they've not got that revisit cost. They've not got that
What would it have
bill.
been previously then?
Could be anything up to a week in the winter months.
To dig a hole and wait for the concrete to cure.
And then revisit. So
right.
then you kind of staging it to a second round.
So you've got the bloke's time, you've got the travel. And subsistence, everything else,
And that can be a real killer, especially if you're doing national rollouts across a big estate. So that's where EV Blocks came about and was born. And since then, it has really just taken off. So much so that that's my now sole focus.
How's the trade responded then? Are you getting evidence from them that it's fast and easy, saving them time and money?
Yeah, absolutely. People like what we do. We get a lot of good feedback around customer service, which is number one for me, because I've been in the contractor's shoes. Having a delay or having anything go a little bit left on site is not what you want to hear. Whereas if we've got our product to site, to the customer, so they can complete in a day, they are over the moon. Because they can then fit more installations in per week, which leads to a faster rollout. And we've also moved to reduced carbon concrete in this year in the UK. So 35% reduced carbon concrete when compared with full fat precast concrete that we were previously using. So that's a great step for us.
Yeah. And it's born in Peterborough, but I guess it could be put anywhere in the world. This is actually a global product.
Yeah. And with that in mind, it is now a licensed product.
Right.
So we've licensed this in America with around 20 production plants set up, ready to go live in 2023.
Right.
So they'll be making EV blocks in America for electricians out in the States as well.
Wow.
And we've had, so we did a kind of a soft launch at the NECA show in Texas, Austin, Texas. That's the National Electrical Contractors Association show.
Right.
And we had the US product on the stand, as it's going to be when we launch. And we asked contractors as they came around, what do they think, and what are their views on EV. And it was a great feedback from those who came to visit the stand. So it's all right, we're on the right path here.
Yeah.
And let's get to it. And we're continuing to that now, expand into Canada as well.
Yeah. So a couple of questions for you personally, Trevor, if I can. Obviously it's been a journey. You closed down your previous business to focus on this one. What have you learned over the past couple of years about this startup almost journey? New product, new markets, everything.
A lot. Setting up a business is one thing. Being good at it is quite the other.
Right.
So I think previously I fell into the trap of, I'm a good electrician, so I'll set up an electrical contracting business.
Yeah.
And it grew and grew and grew. But you need different skills to run a business than what you do to be a great electrician.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And having not understood that, it can trip you up.
Yeah.
Now I've got much better understanding of where we're going, what we're doing, what's important in terms of business, and what's less so,
So what does that mean for EV Blocks then? Because it's quite, the company itself is quite small. The team is quite small at the minute. What are you looking to do in the next few years to, as you broaden across the globe? Let's face it, that's what's happening. What happens to EV headquarters, as it were?
So we'll be continuing to grow in terms of staff numbers, but it'll be quite a lean ship. Mm-hmm. We're not looking to introduce massive overheads into the business unnecessarily. I think a small team can assist licensees and EV block producers across the globe, pretty comfortably. And from our point of view, it's a lot about marketing the product and getting it in front of their customers for them to come and buy EV blocks, tell the story about the solution we provide, and assist those partners as we go along as well.
And I know your focus is on electric car chargers, but I imagine there are lots of things that stand on pedestals. Is there potential for a broadening of the utility of the block and the mounting plate and everything else?
Yeah, so at present we're patent pending on the EV block, its form and function. Yeah, and it's quite broad at the moment, so it doesn't narrow us down to electric vehicles as such. Yeah. So we're awaiting a further response from the European Patent Office at the moment. But once that's kind of goes through, then we can then look at other products that could be mounted onto a pedestal.
Loads of potential.
Yeah.
Any final advice then for a business owner who might have been in your position as you were a couple of years ago, setting off and thinking, right, there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of risk out there as well. What would you say to somebody else who was starting up?
All the information you need is out there. Mm-hmm. You just have to go and find it. So a lot of the great information is in the books. I'm not a fantastic reader by any stretch. Type guy to get a quarter of the way through a book and then never finish it. Right. Which is shocking. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, we've now got YouTube, Spotify, different audio platforms. Yeah. And podcasts. I love kind of education of the van. So instead of listening to the radio on the motorway for 2 hours, I'll listen to a book. Yeah. And that has accelerated the amount of books I've read tremendously. It's
great advice for business owners. Why use trial and error when you can learn from the lessons and mistakes of others?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, I could talk for hours, Trev, but we haven't got that much time. Thank you very much for coming in today, and thank you for not only telling us about what's happening with the charging infrastructure in the UK, but giving us some advice on business as well. Thanks very much for your time.
Most welcome.
Great.